This is a Film Stories original podcast.
ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
Shopping is hard.
I can never find anything in my size.
I don't even know my size.
I buy my clothes the same place I buy my groceries.
There's a better way. Make it easy with Stitch Fix. Just share your size, style, budget, and done. Your personal stylist sends pieces picked just for you.
That was easy.
Stitch Fix. Online personal styling for everyone. Free shipping and returns. No subscription required. Get started today at stitchfix.com.
Hello everybody and welcome to Writers on Film. This is our Cannes edition and the first episode of our Cannes edition, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome back from last year Thomas Schultz.
Yes. Hi John, thanks for having me back and having me be the first one to talk to, so I hope it's a good start for you.
We've got several films that we want to discuss. First off, let's talk about the opening film, which was a sort of French pop musical starring a sort of pop celebrity in France who I wasn't really aware of. What did you make of this? Is called Leave One Day.
Yes.
What did you make of this film?
Well, I was a little uncertain at first. I think it is the very first debut movie that was chosen as an opening film for Cannes by a 40-year-old filmmaker called Amelie, who had done that film as a short before that, on the same name, same actors, and chose to make a feature out of it because she thought there was much more in it that she wanted to tell. I think the big surprise at first was, because we didn't know anything going into the film, was that it's a musical. In the very first scene, the main character and her husband start singing to each other, and I completely love it.
Yeah, it's a very relaxed, it's very non-musical. It's like an anti-musical almost, a very relaxed scene.
Yes.
Choreography was just the two of them dancing around the room.
Yes.
And she's a pop singer,
yes,
the main actress, but he seemed to be, I mean, he's okay as a singer, but not particularly a trained voice or anything like that.
Yes. She's a pop singer, and I think she was the only one in the movie who could actually sing. Everybody else was just winging it. But I love the movie for that, it's not perfect singers who, do like the opera kind of musical thing. It felt more like an extension of their characters, and they just could not help themselves but singing in those particular moments. And I like that. I really like when she, in the scene with her mother in the van, where the mother starts singing Parole, like the famous song from Dalida and Alain Delon. I thought that was a very nice touch. For a long time, I did not think everything was coming together. It felt like the ideas were better than the execution. But pretty late in the movie, there's a scene where she's pregnant. She doesn't want to have the child. She already has a date with the abortion clinic, but she has to go back to her parents because her father had his third heart attack or something. So, and of course, I mean, it's a well-known story. She has to reconnect with people from her past.
Yeah, we should just say that the beginning of the film, she's a top chef,
yes,
chasing her Michelin stars, and she's about to open a new restaurant. And in the midst of this, she decides she has to go home, persuaded to go home, to sort of mend an acrimonious relationship with her father, who runs a kind of pit stop, greasy spoon cafe for truckers. And the antagonism between the two is very much based on the fact that he resents her sort of snobbishness, which he sort of hilariously notes down in a notebook he keeps in his pocket to quote from her television show appearances.
Yes. But in the end, we learn, of course, that it's his way. I mean, he's very much in love with his daughter, and it's also a way of showing his love by doing that. So I thought that was very nice. So in the scene with the midwife, she thinks she might be losing the baby, so she gets examined by the midwife, and they keep talking. And at one point, the midwife says to her something to the effect of, "Yes, but you have every possibility to make a choice." And I love the movie for that. I mean, it seems like such a simple sentence, and it seems like very obvious, but in times we are living in right now, where apparently there's people who do not want women to have the possibility to make a choice. I just loved her for saying that, because to me that completely opened up the whole film. And I think in that moment it also changed the main character. And suddenly, to me, all the pieces came together. So while I was a little antsy during the film, where I thought, well, when does it, when is the scene where it's gonna like lift me up?
Yes.
I think in the end it worked out really well. And I also felt the way that she touched on all those different topics: family, love, having kids, thinking about, how to balance your private life and your profession. I think she's actually making some really good observations about it, and I like, and it's a spoiler, that the movie pretty much has an open end to what she is gonna do with her life.
Absolutely. And I mean, this film was received very coolly by a lot of the press. It even received, I think, 1-star reviews from Peter Bradshaw in The Guardian, and he wasn't the only one. I do feel that is a little bit harsh. I don't think I reacted as positively as you did to the film, but I also found there was nothing wrong with the film. There was not. It didn't hurt anybody. It was having fun. I had fun watching it. I wonder if it's responsible of the selection committee to put the weight of the opening film on something quite so effervescent and inconsequential. I don't mean that in a negative way, but it is like a knowingly slight movie.
Yes. I feel they wanted to kickstart the film with something that, is sort of a crowd pleaser and, has people leave in a good mood when they leave the cinema. So I feel the movie achieves that, and I think it's better than just being a crowd pleaser. I think it has a lot of things on its mind. But yes, you can also see it's a debut movie, and it is not really reaching. It is not super ambitious, not as ambitious maybe like the next movie we're going to talk about.
Excellent segue, I should say. But just quickly before we move on, I wanted to mention the names of the cast members because we haven't so far. So Cecile, the chef who returns home, is played by the pop star Juliette Armanet, So I just wanted to put that out there because she really is the lead. She reminded me of a young Charlotte Gainsbourg as well. She sort of has bangs, a fringe, and
yes, I was also thinking of Camille Coutin. She's that kind of type of attractive but not pretty. Just like a grounded woman.
Yeah, one of the boys, in a way. She's quite happy to get to drink with the old friends in the garage and the truck stops, and as well as circling the world of Parisian haute cuisine. So let's follow your segue and talk about the next film, which is The Sound of Falling.
Yes.
And this is a German film, so I expect you to be the lead genius on this one.
All right. Well, it's the first German film in Cannes competitions since Perfect Days by Wim Wenders, if you may call that a German film, because it's about, it plays in Tokyo and is a very very Japanese film by Wim Wenders. What's more interesting is it's the first German film by a female director since Toni Erdmann by Maren Ade in 2016 that was chosen for competition. It's always something of a sore spot for the German film industry, being neglected by Cannes, and everybody's just trying to think about what's the special recipe you need to have, to finally land a place in competition. This movie did. Apparently, it was the very first movie that was chosen for competition. Back in December.
Right.
That's what
vote of confidence.
That's what the producers tell me. It's even more of a big thing because nobody in Germany knew anything about it. It was first talked about in February in the American trades that this was a movie that completely overwhelmed the committee of Cannes, and that they really wanted to have it, and that they really wanted to have it for competition. I mean, this is unheard of. It's unheard of for a German film, and it's unheard of for a German film that's by a director who had only done one film before in 2017 called The Daughter.
Yeah, so this is a sophomore film of the filmmaker Mascha Schilinski.
Yes.
And to just give our listeners an idea of the story, it's it's difficult to sort of sum up in a synopsis because it is a film that interweaves different time periods. It's intergenerational. It spans an entire century from the First World War to the present day in a German, then obviously East German, as the country is divided, farmhouse. We sort of go a little bit into the environs. There's a nearby river which plays a very important part, but it really is centered around that. We don't leave that place. Everything that's important happens there, and it's mainly told from the points of view of various women who are connected via blood ties, mothers, daughters, granddaughters, grandparents. We see children who grow up to be grandparents and so on and so forth. I thought this was one of the strongest early films I've ever seen in Cannes competition. Usually you get this kind of film like later on when you're really needing it,
Yes.
But in this case, it was the first competition film I saw, and it struck me as a very strong contender for a big prize. It's really early to say that, but such was the power of this film.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think the only time I can remember that a first film in competition made such a strong impact was in 2007, Christian Mungiu, 4 months, 3 weeks, 2 days. I think that was the first film in competition as well in that year, and that went on to win the Palme d'Or. I have to agree. I mean, it's astounding, such an ambitious and confidently made film by a filmmaker who had only done one film before. She told me that she worked on it for 5 years. The DP is her husband, Fabian Gampert. I think some of the images he conjures up are absolutely otherworldly, and you really, I always love sitting in the cinema and being baffled by how did they do that. And you hardly ever get that anymore because mostly you can just say, well, they did it in the computer.
Yes.
But in this film, I felt like this is absolutely stunning. How did they do that?
Yeah, it genuinely is transporting. You genuinely go to different places and different states, I feel. There's a lot of water in the film with the river, and you go under the water and you see things which are, as you say, remarkable. And there's lots of points of view and repetition. It's a film which rhymes like a poem.
Yes.
All the way through. There's like a drop of water here, a drop of sweat there.
Yes.
There is the sound of falling, as in people falling in various ways and various plot parts of the story. There is the idea of memory, the idea of photographs and filming things, it's very strong. And it had a sort of novelistic richness. I'm always a little resistant because we often talk with literary phrases when we talk about cinema we really love, as if we need literature to sort of support claims that cinema is an art form. But this really reminded me of books like Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. Well, there's also a scene with flying women in it, which is also from Tarkovsky, but it just has that sense of depth and breadth that you get in the profoundest works of literature. And I mean, I sound like I'm going over the top with this. I recognize that. And some people have been underwhelmed, so other opinions are available. But for me, I found this moving and intellectually very satisfying.
I agree. I think it's a difficult film to watch. It's a difficult film to grasp in one viewing. I find it very challenging, and I'm not sure if I completely understood everything in it and about it. And I mean, it demands repeated viewings, I think. What I found interesting for me was that I always kept going back to thinking of the film in musical terms. I mean, it feels like a symphony, and I had to think of Michael Powell, who in his autobiography talks about the composed film, where, you know, every single pieces are choreographed movement, sound, images, and music, and everything has to work together in a fluent way. And I felt like, I mean, this was the perfect composed film. I thought it was very, very strong.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, you know, music is in the film is an important feature as well. I mean, all the production design, everything. I mean, this takes place in a house, and the way the house changes, the way the decoration changes, and it always feels lived in. It never feels like this is a set design, which is obviously the absolute key to perfect set design. You never notice it. I loved the fact that nothing was over-egged. There was a real lightness of touch to both the performances and the direction, and yet it just went in directions that I wasn't expecting. There's a amazing, and again, this is a very novelistic thing. There's a repeated trope that goes up throughout the film where we see the imaginings and fantasies of the characters, which then prove not to be true. And even though it does that, like on several different occasions, it kind of caught me out every time, and made me question everything we were seeing as what is life but an imagined experience.
I agree. I feel in a way it is almost a haunted house story. It is a ghost story. It is about, you know, but it's not just ghosts that are haunting. It's memories, and it's just little gestures, you know, that repeat where the past is calling into the future or into the present. I know that sounds super pretentious. But I never felt the movie was pretentious in any way.
Not at all. And it's like, you know, from Draeger types to iPods, there's this idea that technology as well is a form of haunting and a form of, you know, bringing things into our lives which are not there, or are no longer there. That was, I mean, that's a film. I also, just to talk for a moment about the time it takes for that sort of film to sink in. In the morning, I met Guy Lodge, the variety film critic, and he was on his way to see it again. And for a second time, and I was like, oh, why are you seeing it again? And I hadn't seen it at this point. And he said, oh, well, I didn't realize I had to review it. I've only just been given the job to review it. I've seen it already in London, and but I feel I can't review it without a second watch. And he was very positive about it. And I was sort of like, oh, that, you know, it's very, time is very important when you're in Cannes. Mm-hmm. And so watching it, repeating a viewing is something that I would find very difficult to fit in. So the fact that he felt the need to do that really speaks to the richness of the film and the complexity of sort of digesting it, you know, without it in any way being necessarily heavy. Challenging, yes, but there's no, this film is easily watchable by anybody. It might not be for everybody,
Yes.
but there's nothing in it which would stop you from at least having access to it.
Yes, no, I completely agree. Also, it's a film where you think, a lot of times you see movies and you think, well, this could also be a theater play, or this could be, something else. This could be a series or whatever. I mean, this needs to be a film. This is a cinematic experience. And also, I feel, as a German, it is, as German as a movie or a story can be, because it really delves a lot of into, I think, almost like the sort of a German DNA.
The texture.
Like this heavy romanticism. And
this is one thing I wanted to ask you, because one sort of noticeable absence in the film is the Second World War. The Second World War and the rise of Nazism in Germany is like a period that is almost, we see the aftermath, the rumored approach of the Russians. We see the First World War. But even with the First World War, we're only seeing glimpses. We're not seeing, it's not like we understand that East Germany and West Germany now exist, but none of this is done like as newsreel footage or anything like that. It's there for you to, if you want it. But the Second World War is really kind of not, unless I missed something, it's really not mentioned at all.
Well, I really like the fact that she put besides the present tense part, which of course also might be an important inflection point in German history. She puts every single episode in inflection points of German history. First World War, Second World War, and the end of East Germany. I think she says that part plays in the 80s, so it's shortly before the reunification. So it's and she just draws from those time periods and how people felt and how their lives were without ever going into it. And if you want to stretch yourself a little bit, you could see the film as a bit of a companion piece to White Ribbon. Which was still pretty opaque, but it was very much about, finding a German essence that drew people to fascism.
Yes.
I think, it never is a political film because it's very much about female experience and female emotion and how women survived or maybe not survived in those times, which are all about hardships, and death is like always present. It's almost like, it's like almost like a gothic fairy tale at times. And it's just something that's part of life that people, live with. This one scene is absolutely haunting when the one sister has died and they prop her up for a family photo where she does not seem like she's dead. As if she was like a living part of the family still.
Yeah, and I know you sort of started and then stopped yourself, but there is a moment where they're preparing the corpse to give her that lifelike appearance, and it's one of the most gruesome experiences I've had so far certainly at the festival. Let's move on. So that's highly recommended.
Yes.
Absolutely. If we have any more films of like it, of this quality in the competition, we'll be looking at a very vintage year for Cannes. I think we might actually, because we're going to talk about one of those later on. But first of all, Dossier 137.
Yes.
Which is a French film by Dominic Moll.
Dominic Moll.
And it is a film which is set around the Yellow Vest protests in Paris. It claims to be based on true stories rather than a particular true story. I think it's sort of bringing together several incidents and replaying them. And it's basically a internal affairs investigator, the police of the police, who is following a case, the dossier of the title, in which a young man has been brutally injured by a riot gun, by a policeman firing a riot gun at him, hitting him in the head and causing serious injury. And she is investigating the incident to see if there's any culpability on the part of the police, and facing institutional backlash from her colleagues and the public. It's kind of like a Serpico, if you like.
Yeah.
What did you make of Moll's film?
I liked it a lot. I didn't like it as much as the one he did before, that was in Cannes 3 years ago, The Night of the 12th, which was somehow buried in Cannes premiere, and later on went on to win 6 Césars, best film among them, which I felt was completely warranted. I mean, I thought that movie was just absolutely stunning and great. It's like the French Zodiac, about police investigating also a true story, the death of a 20-year-old, 18-year-old girl going home from a party and never coming back home, and they find the body raped and killed, and they never find the perpetrator. And it's very much about the frustrations of police who follow that case for years. It becomes a cold case. They reopen it. I mean, they always have the hope of, finally finding the right piece of evidence, but they never do. And I think that movie was absolutely stunning. So, I mean, Dominic Moll was kind of like high up on my viewing list this year. And I think he delivers, but it's a much more somber piece. It is, I mean, of course, highly reminiscent of Sidney Lumet. I had to think of, I think there's a movie by Maiven called Police that played here 13, 14 years ago, 2011, I think. It's also about police work.
It's very much a procedural.
It is a procedural, like the last one was a procedural.
Yeah.
But it is very different. It's very somber in tone, and I think it takes a little while to get into gear, for it to, because it starts out so simple, and you really know very much where this is going, But I think it raises a lot of interesting questions about police, about the way we deal with police, about institutional violence, what police can get away with. But what I found absolutely stunning in the film was Lea Drucker in the lead role. I mean, whenever she's in a film, I mean, you just have to pay attention because it's going to be good.
She's absolutely magnetic, isn't she, in this film? And she has this sort of, I don't know, it's a sort of seriousness which she can alleviate at any moment with a lightness of touch, so it never becomes heavy. She has a family situation where she has a son who's almost a little bit too perfect. You see him sort of reading in bed, and he looks at his mum looking on her phone at cat videos and sort of gives a little bit of a, like, what's the matter with you? Why are you always on your phone? So a kind of reversal, and that sort of stuff is quite sweet. And I think when she goes home to her village at a certain point where you feel she's almost having a break from the case, but actually not, her relationship with her family is also very lightly done, very well done, and offers some relief to the sort of drudgery, but not drudgery, but the darkness and the pessimism. I think it's a very pessimistic film.
It is.
There's a moment where a policeman talks about how they're there to defend the Republic, and the excesses of the police are very much seen in that context, that they're feeling like they're on the front line of a war, to mirror rhetoric that's been used by the politicians of the time. And that the film itself, though, does seem to see the Republic in a state of collapse, and that society is really beginning to ramp up the tensions which will lead to the populist movements that we see today. And there's a hopelessness to it.
Yes.
There's a sense that nothing is going to be fixed.
Yes, I feel it's a very resigned movie. The first time she goes back home to her village, she drives by this little protesters village where the Yellow Vests are still like chanting their slogans, are absolutely positive that they will bring about change. The second time she goes back home, she drives by that protesters village and it's being torn down by bulldozers. I mean, I think that's pretty much, sums up everything he has to say about it. But what I also always like about Moll's films, even if they're so somber and serious, there's always a slyness about them. You know, there's a little cheekiness, and I think it comes through in what you're saying about the family with the son almost being too perfect.
Yes.
Because he absolutely knows that, and he's kind of like winking at you.
Yeah.
I always like that in Moll's films, that they always, even, you know, if it goes to very, very dark places like he did in these last two films, I mean, there's always a lightness there.
Yes.
That I truly like about him as a director.
Yeah, I really get that, and I think I think there was a snappiness to the film as well. It never hangs around. It keeps moving on, even though it's serious. It's not somber in a way that he lets any shot last longer than it really needs to. And he preempts a lot of things. You think, okay, we're going to be in this room for a long time, and he cuts away. We're going somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the final film that we're going to talk about today, which is Sirat, the Oliver. How do you pronounce his last name?
Well, I heard people say Laxe yesterday.
Laxe. Okay, so this is a Spanish.
Well, apparently he's French-born, but it sounds like a Catalanian name to me.
Right.
It would be Laxe. You know, a simpleton like me would say it's Olivier Laxe, but apparently it's Laxe.
Okay, well let's follow. I'll follow your lead there. And this is a film which is set in Morocco and is based. It opens with this. I was just writing a review for Time Out before we started recording, and it starts with this dance scene where they're out in the desert, the sun is beating down, and I think anytime you see dancing, if it's really interesting if they're dancing for the camera or they're dancing for themselves, and they're definitely dancing for themselves. This is not decorative or artistic dance. This is people lost in the midst of some sort of internal physical investigation of how their bodies work with music. And in many ways it looks very strange and very weird, like you're watching the dance of the damned. You're watching people who are compelled to dance as much as anything. Some of them look angry, some of them look ecstatic, but they're all pounding away with this distorted techno music. And that goes on for that opening scene takes a good while to get going. And in the midst of them is a Spanish father, Luis, with his young son, Esteban, and they are handing out flyers because they're on a mission to search for a daughter who is missing. It's not entirely clear why she's missing or what the circumstances. It's just she's been incommunicado.
Yes.
And so they believe, they've heard a rumor or something that she'll be around this dance scene. And so they've turned up to find her. However, there's an international crisis taking place, and the military turn up to break up the illegal rave. And Luis and Esteban join a sort of caravan of dancers who are on to the next rave, and a journey begins, an adventure begins, which is part Western, part science fiction, part thriller, and utterly surprising, thrilling, and crazy. And I would argue, we were talking about Sound of Falling earlier, is my second 5-star film of the festival, and we're only on Friday.
Yes, I completely agree. I mean, the only thing I knew going in was like the basic synopsis that, you know, the father and his son are looking for the son's sibling, and that they're going to a desert rave in Morocco.
It's like Burning Man, but with like old, tired people.
Yeah, I mean, the people they go on the journey with, I mean, they really look like veterans of
the 90s rave scene.
Yes, but of every single war that has been fought in a Mike and Moorcock book, you know. And I loved everything about the film, and I never knew where it was gonna take me, and I was riveted all the way through. But I thought the last 30 minutes were almost transcendent.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that was absolutely stunning. And it has moments and scenes and images that I personally feel I've never seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. And utterly bizarre. And I think a lot of it will hinge on how willing you are to go with it, because the turns it takes are at times hilarious, at times tragic, heartbreaking. And sort of they transcend genre. You know, you are really thinking, is this a Western? Is this a war movie? Is this a science fiction movie? There are touches of Wages of Fear. There are touches of Mad Max. There are touches of The Searchers. You know, there's everything and more. And some of the shots. This is a director, I think he's worked in Morocco before.
Yes.
And he really has an eye for landscapes. He's really someone who can see the otherworldness, the otherness of Morocco and those mountains. And he uses it to its fullest extent.
Yeah, it feels like a journey to the end of time in a way. There's one scene where they're trying to cross a river,
yes.
And those techno nomads, let's call them. They have like these huge trucks, that can go through every whatever. They're unstoppable in those machines. But the father and his son, they follow in their small minivan that they have, and of course for them it's impossible to cross that river because their car would flood. And immediately in that second, Sorcerer popped into my mind.
Right. Yeah.
William Friedkin. And that came like, that for me came like a lead for me through the film, because it just said, for me it was kind of like, yeah, this is Sorcerer, but not with the music of Tangerine Dream, but with techno music.
And there's so much about that as well in terms of they're very much DIYing. They're repairing all their speakers, and the distortion that you hear on the soundtrack. One of the characters actually says, that's what I like. I like the idea that this music could at any point fail. And you never know if this sound is going to be the last thing that you hear.
Yes.
And that sort of becomes the value of the whole film. Are we seeing this character for the last time? Is this the last image we're going to watch?
Yes. And I love how the movie gets wilder and wilder as we go on. I mean,
it reminded me a little bit of Werner Herzog as well.
Very much so. Yes.
Werner Herzog on shrooms, perhaps.
Yes, very much so. Before we started the recording, I told you that I felt reminded of a movie by Barbie Schroeder called La Vallée. I think it also has an international title, Obscured by Clouds, and Pink Floyd did the soundtrack. Funnily enough, I had to think of Pink Floyd at the very first scene when they built like this wall of sound with the amplifiers. I felt reminded of Pink Floyd in Pompeii.
Yes, of course, which is at a re-release.
Yes. So it and that is a story of, it's been a while since I last seen it. It's the story of French scientists looking in the South African jungle and mountains for a mysterious village or country that is supposed to exist behind the clouds.
Right.
So that also turns into this psychedelic journey that, where everything is being questioned. I mean, existence itself in a way. And I always loved that film. I mean, it's such a druggy, wonderful film. And I saw that again in Sirat without ever being repetitive or it is completely its own animal.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I keep using these references, but, it's like this meets this, it's a usual review shorthand. But, I've never seen anything like this before. And, I mean, down to the cast, you've got the very famous Spanish actor playing the father, Sergi Lopez.
Who, funnily enough, was the lead in Dominic Moll's first film.
Right.
In 2000.
Which was called?
In German, it's Harry is a friend of mine or something like that. It has a strange German title.
I think it might be called Park or Nail.
It's something.
I think I saw it in Venice.
something. No, it was in Cannes.
Okay, then I didn't see it.
It was in 2000 in Cannes, and was kind of like I remember being a major discovery, but it's a very black comedy.
Right.
And Sergio Lopez, it's a Teorema riff comes into this family and just completely turns it upside down.
I see. Yeah, people might know him also from, wasn't he in Pan's Labyrinth?
I think so, yes. Yes.
Guillermo del Toro's sort of breakthrough film. And yeah, he's like the only really established actor.
Yeah.
And the rest of the performers seem to be sort of non-actors playing themselves, because they all have the same names as their characters.
Yes.
And some of them are amputees, and they all look like they've lived the life. I mean, nobody looks like they've put on a costume but I mean, I might be totally wrong about that, but that's as far as I can tell.
Yes, I haven't read up on it, but I think, I mean, they are actually really just people who travel from rave to rave and live their own wild existence. So it's kind of like the trippy nomad land. Yeah, yes,
exactly. They're what we used to call crusties.
They absolutely are, but they're adorable and endearing, and the way they treat each other, I mean, it's with deep love and respect, and they all connect through their love of music, and just going to that next rave and have that experience.
That's so true, and I think they have so much love for Louis as well, and his son. And when Louis and Esteban are together in their tent, there's this beautiful conversation about someone snoring, and it's one of the most wonderful intimate moments of a father talking to his child and just showing just a beautiful companionship. And it would be the first scene that if you wrote this in a screenplay and you went to some sort of screenwriter's school, they would tell you to take out, because it doesn't forward the story, it doesn't do this. You should have show, not tell, blah, blah, blah. And it's one of the best scenes in the movie. It's absolutely fantastic. It totally works for me and gives the movie something that it desperately needs by the end of the film, which is heart. You know, you actually care what happens to these people, and the world is not going to a good place.
No, the world is ending while their world is ending.
Yeah, absolutely, both in the macrocosm and the microcosm. So let's say this is our first episode, and we've already talked about two amazing films, one very good film, and one film that you liked a lot and I thought was okay. So I think we're doing okay.
You're doing good.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Thomas.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.